Hi, I'm Edward G. Pettit from the Rosenbach, and I'm going to read some Ulysses for you today. This is episode 7, Aeolus, and Leopold Bloom, who is a newspaper advertising agent, is just gone to the Freeman's Journal. Gentlemen of the press, gross-booted draymen rolled barrels dull thudding out of princes' stores and bumped them up on the brewery float. On the brewery float bumped dull-thudding barrels rolled by gross-booted draymen out of princes' stores. "There it is," Red Murray said. "Alexander Keyes." "Just cut it out, will you?" Bloom said, "and I'll take it round to the telegraph office." The door of Rutledge's office creaked again. Davy Stevens, minute in a large cape coat, a small felt hat crowning his ringlets, passed out with a roll of papers under his cape, a king's courier. Red Murray's long shears sliced out the advertisement from the newspaper in 4 clean strokes, scissors and paste. "I'll go through the printing works," Mr. Bloom said, taking the cut square. "Of course, if he wants a pa," Red Murray said earnestly, a pen behind his ear, "we can do him one." "Right," said Mr. Bloom said with a nod. "I'll rub that in." William Braden, Esquire, of Oakland's Sandymount. Red Murray touched Mr. Bloom's arm with the shears and whispered, "Braden." Mr. Bloom turned and saw the liveried porter raise his lettered cap as a stately figure entered between the newsboards of the Weekly Freeman and National Press, and the Freeman's Journal and National Press. Dull-thudding Guinness's barrels. It passed statelily up the staircase, steered by an umbrella, a solemn, beard-framed face. Up the broadcloth back ascended each step, back. "All his brains are in the shape of his neck," Simon Dedalus says. "Welts of flesh behind on him. Fat folds of neck. Fat neck. Fat neck." "Don't you think his face is like our Savior?" Red Murray whispered. The door of Rutledge's office whispered. They always build one door opposite another for the wind to way in, way out. Our Savior, beard-framed oval face. Talking in the dusk. Mary, Martha. Steered by an umbrella sword to the footlights. Mario the tenor. "Or like Mario," Mr. Bloom said. "Yes," Red Murray agreed. "But Mario was said to be the picture of our Savior." Jesus Mario, with rougy cheeks, doublet and spindle legs, hand on his heart, in Martha. "Come, thou lost one, come, thou dear one." Exit Bloom. "I'm just running round to Bachelor's Walk," Mr. Bloom said, "about this ad of Keyes. Want to fix it up. They tell me he's round there in Dillon's." He looked indecisively for a moment at their faces. The editor, who, leaning against the mantel-shelf, had propped his head on his hand, suddenly stretched forth an arm amply. "Begone," he said. "The world is before you." "Back in no time," Mr. Bloom said, hurrying out. J. O'Malloy took the tissues from Lenehan's hand and read them, blowing them apart gently, without comment. "He'll get that advertisement," the professor said, staring through his black-rimmed spectacles over the cross-blind. "Look at the young scamps after him." "Show? Where?" Lenehan cried, running to the window. A street cortege. Both smiled over the cross-blind at the file of capering newsboys in Mr. Bloom's wake, the last zigzagging white on the breeze a mocking kite, a tail of white bowknots. "Look at the young gutter-snipe behind him, hue and cry," Lenehan said. "And you'll kick, oh, my rib risible, taking off his flat spogs in the walk, small nines, steel upon larks." He began to mazurka in a swift caricature across the floor on sliding feet past the fireplace to J. O'Malloy, who placed the tissues in his receiving hands. "What's that?" said Miles Crawford with a start. "Where are the other two gone?" "Who?" the professor said, turning. "They're gone round to the Oval for a drink. Patty Hooper is there with Jack Hall. Came over last night." "Come on, then," Miles Crawford said. "Where's my hat?" He walked jerkily into the office behind, parting the vent of his jacket, jingling his keys in his back pocket. They jingled then in the air and against the wood as he locked his desk drawer. "He's pretty well on," Professor McHugh said in a low voice. "Seems to be," J.J. O'Malloy said, taking out a cigarette case and murmuring meditation. "But it is not always as it seems. Who has the most matches?" The calumet of peace. He offered a cigarette to the professor and took one himself. Lenehan promptly struck a match for them and lit their cigarettes in turn. J.J. O'Malloy opened his case and offered it. "Thanky voos," Lenehan said, helping himself. The editor came from the inner office, a straw hat awry on his brow. He declaimed in song, pointing sternly at Professor McHugh. "'Twas rank and fame that tempted thee, 'twas empire charmed thy heart." The professor grinned, locking his long lips. "Eh, you bloody old Roman Empire," Miles Crawford said. He took a cigarette from the open case. Lenehan, lighting it for him with quick grace, said, "Silence for my brand-new riddle." "Imperium Romanum," J.J. O'Malloy said gently. "It sounds nobler than British or Brixton. The word reminds one somehow of fat in the fire." Miles Crawford blew his first puff violently towards the ceiling. "That's it," he said. "We are the fat. You and I are the fat in the fire. We haven't got the chance of a snowball in hell." The grandeur that was Rome. "Wait a moment," Professor McHugh said, raising two quiet claws. "We mustn't be led away by words, by sounds of words. We think of Rome. Imperial, imperious, imperative." He extended elocutionary arms from frayed, stained shirt cuffs, pausing. "What was their civilization? Vast, I allow, but vile. Cloacae, sewers. The Jews in the wilderness and on the mountaintop said, 'It is meet to be here. Let us build an altar to Jehovah.' The Roman, like the Englishman who follows in his footsteps, brought to every new shore on which he set his foot, on our shore he never set it, only his cloacal obsession. He gazed about him in his toga, and he said, 'It is meet to be here. Let us construct a water closet.'" "Which they accordingly did do," Lenehan said. "Our old ancient ancestors, as we read in the first chapter of Guinnesses, were partial to the running stream." "They were nature's gentlemen," J.J. O'Malloy murmured, "but we have also Roman law." "And Pontius Pilate is its prophet," Professor McHugh responded. "Do you know that story about Chief Baron Pallas?" J.J. O'Malloy asked. "It was at the Royal University dinner. Everything was going swimmingly." "First my riddle," Lenehan said. "Are you ready?" Mr. O'Madden Burke, tall in copious gray of Donegal tweed, came in from the hallway. Stephen Dedalus behind him, uncovered as he entered. "Entrez, mes enfants," Lenehan cried. "I escort a suppliant," Mr. O'Madden Burke said melodiously. "Youth, led by experience, visits notoriety." "How do you do?" the editor said, holding out a hand. "Come in. Your governor is just gone." Question marks. Lenehan said to all, "Silence! What opera resembles a railway line? Reflect, ponder, excogigate, reply." Stephen handed over the typed sheets, pointing to the title and signature. "Who?" the editor said. Bit torn off. "Mr. Garrett Deasy," Stephen said. "That old Pelters," the editor said. "Who tore it? Was he short taken?" "On swift sail flaming, from storm and south, he comes, pale vampire, mouth to my mouth." "Good day, Stephen," the professor said, coming to peer over their shoulders. "Foot and mouth? Are you turned?" "Bullock befriending bard." A very happy Bloomsday from the Rosenbach.